All right, welcome back, everybody. Here's the part 7 of the Sgraffito Mask project, creating the eye holes and cleaning up the rest of the actual finished attached areas. The whole thing is basically done except for a few of the cleanup areas, and I decided to make sure that I was going to do something with the eyes. So this time I'm going to actually cut them out. I'm just kind of looking at the impressions on the outside or from the back side to see where exactly the eyes are located on the back, and then also making sure that I kind of write and draw a new design on the surface of the actual mask to make sure I plan out exactly where I want my eyes to be. Just checking overall the overall edges, making sure that they have a little more cleanup to be done, still have a little more cleanup to do on those, and then making sure that I use the right tools for the job when I need to do that. I'm going to use probably a shredder on some of it, and then I'm going to use a loop tool you'll see later on in the video to help clean up some of the areas where you can't quite get the shredder into. Now, drawing and cutting out the eyes. Make sure you do a couple things first. Make sure you redraw very lightly on the surface and kind of plan things out so that you get a better understanding of how big and how symmetrical you want your eyes to be from one side to the other. Now, these are short little strokes that I'm using with the that little arrow blade. You could be using a needle tool or a pencil, something that you use on the surface to kind of make sure that you measure out exactly where you want your eyes to be. If it's not quite right, you can just smooth it out and try again. If you want to make the eyes a little bit bigger, start a little bit on the smaller side, and then you work your way out to the size that you want. Because once you've cut some away, you won't be able to get it back. So start maybe on a little bit smaller scale, and then also make sure that your location of your eyes are not too close to each other, and also not too close to the outer edge of the mask, because if you have maybe less than an inch or so of space between the openings, you could run into the problem where the opening is too close to the edge of the mask or too close to the other eye area, and then it's going to become an area that's weak and it could crack. So make sure that you measure things out, draw things out, measure things out twice, and then make sure that you cut once. So you always measure a couple times first, make sure you have it exactly where you want it, check all those different things that I was talking about with the spacing, and then you can start using your arrow blade tool to start to cut right on the sketched line that you created just a second ago. I'm working my way from the corner out. So I don't want to take the blade and move towards the corners. I want to start the blade at the corner and work my way away from it, so I don't accidentally cut a deep line into my mask towards the edge or towards the other eye. So work your way back and forth, and this is very similar to maybe just doing the same thing you would do if you were cutting out a pumpkin for Halloween. And then when you get to the point where you've actually released the entire piece of clay, you can just stab the tool right in, and then it'll pop right out. So make sure that you do that on the other one the same way. Work from the corner, blocking a little bit of the video there. I apologize for that, but you want to make sure that you go from corner out, and then make sure you got the line that you like, and then start working all the way through that slab with that blade. And eventually you'll start to feel the slab give out. You'll see it kind of wiggle around a little bit. Then you know exactly that you've actually cut through the entire piece of clay, and it'll release once you pick it up with the little blade. That easy. Now, the rough edge around the eye, that needs to be cleaned up still, and you need to use maybe the arrow blade to kind of scrape it away, or you can use a needle tool later, or something else, maybe a loop tool. A lot of different choices that you can use to kind of help clean up those edges that are on the opening of the eye. So right now they're very rough and kind of frayed on the edge, and we want to use something else to do the cleanup. These tools right here are going to be used to kind of clean up around that excess slip that was left there after attaching the horns from last video. I like to take a couple different tools depending on what I'm using it for, and I'll kind of adjust as I go around. So I'm just kind of scraping and kind of pinching off that excess clay, and then I'm going to start drawing in some of the texture that I have on the actual horns, that I want to have on the actual horns. So I'm just drawing these kind of thin groove lines with the tools, and then kind of smoothing them out again so they're not too deep, but they're there, and you can see a little bit of texture on the actual horn. So it's got that little bit of extra surface design or a surface quality that you can look at, and makes it a little bit more interesting. So do that on both of them. Make sure that you're carefully smoothing things out. You're not really digging a groove out of it. You're kind of tapering it off and having it disappear into the actual forehead. The other option would be, if I wanted to, I could have made another little ring of clay and wrapped around the horn to make it look like kind of like a skin buildup around the actual horn. But I decided not to do that and make sure it's just kind of a smooth transition between the two. If you have any other areas that you need cleaning up, make sure you take care and do that before you let things dry out. Now I'm adding some more details into the wrinkle area of the brow and up into the forehead. And I'm just drawing it in with a needle tool. And now I'm using the same needle tool to kind of smooth out that very edge of the cutout parts of the eyes. Eventually you use a little bit of water and a sponge and kind of smooth things out. On the back of the mask, once you pick it up off the mold, it should be leather hard. It should be safe enough to actually pick it up, and it won't have any problem holding its shape. You can start shaving off some of the excess clay around the back edge, so that when it's resting on the table or resting in the kiln, you're not going to chip off a big chunk of your clay because you didn't take the time to clean it up beforehand. Now I'm taking a loop tool, the straight edge loop tool, and using that to get rid of that little bit of a fold as a result of the cutting part from last video with the arrow blade tool. So I'm just rounding things off to make it look a little bit more complete, a little bit more finished. And then I want to make sure that if I have any separation areas between, like they did on the chin right there, either I shave away until the line disappears, or I can add some clay to that spot by scoring and slipping it on and blending it back into what we need to kind of blend in right at the corner of the chin there. So you can see a little bit of a clay separation there, and we're going to fix that before we let the whole thing dry out. Take the same loop tool and clean up the back edge of each of the openings that you've cut, and you can see that there's definitely enough space between the eye opening and the edge of the mask, and between each of the holes themselves, to hopefully keep that from cracking. If you get less than an inch apart, then we run into a problem, possibly run into a problem when it starts to dry out or gets fired. Now, if it's super thick, you might have to hollow out some of the clay from the back, where the nose might be at, or where the eyebrow area might be at. You might need to hollow it out from the backside with the loop tool, just to make sure that the drying is a little bit more even, and that we don't have anything blowing up during the firing and blowing up off the mask. And once you've done all that, clean up the mouth if you have an opening there. Make sure you can kind of keep your station kind of cleaned off too, the bag as well. You shouldn't have any shavings or anything like that stuck to the back of your mask. Try to keep a nice clean work area. If you feel like you're quite, pretty close to being done, always spray it again one more time before you wrap it up, and then store it for the next time that you're ready to do some more work on it. It should always be leather hard throughout this process, and should not get any drier than that. So make sure it stays leather hard before you're completely finished. Wrap it up carefully, fold it all over, and then take the other bag and put the entire thing inside that bag and wrap it up again. Okay, I think that's about it. All right, good luck.